It's Wednesday, Yud Dalid, Shvat Tavshin Ein Dalid. We are in Teres Menachem Sefer Mamar Tavshin Yud Aleph Tavshin Yud Beis. In the Mamar VLo Sihiye Meshakeiloh, Tavshin Yud Beis. Parshas Mishpat Tavshin Yud Beis. We are on page Reish Tes Zayin at the top, at the full stop. The first line on the top at the word V'hainu. The Rebbe is addressing here the concept, the phenomenon, the idea of Avodas Hashem, man's service of Hashem. And its significance from the perspective, from Hashem's perspective. The Rebbe quoted from the Avodas HaKodesh that we find contradictions in the sources of the Torah, our sages, that whether serving Hashem is meaningful above, from Hashem's perspective. On the one hand, we find expressions, statements saying that they are not meaningful. So far as Hashem is concerned, it makes no difference what we do and how we do it. On the other hand, we find other sources which seem to indicate that they are meaningful. They do make a difference so far as Hashem is concerned. So the question is serving Hashem only for the purpose of refining us? Is it only for our purpose? Or does it also have meaning so far as Hashem is concerned? So the Rebbe began to explain by first quoting the Avodas HaKodesh, that when we say those statements in Chazal, in our sages, the sources of our sages, the Talmud and Medrash, and so on and so forth, which indicate that Avodas Hashem, service of Hashem, so man's service of Hashem, is meaningless to Hashem, but rather it's there only for the purpose of refining, refining creatures, refining us. That is from the perspective of the singular master, the source of the sources. However, for the purpose of the glory, to bestow divine flow, divine energy on the supernal heads, to unite the beginning of the thought with its end, it is vital. So in other words, in simple terms, what the Avodas HaKodesh is saying, and the Rebbe is going to explain, is that when we say that serving Hashem is only meaningful for the person, to refine the created being, but from Hashem's perspective, it is not. It doesn't make a difference. That is so far as a level of godliness which is totally beyond Hishtalshalus, totally beyond being related to, totally beyond the chain order of creation. But when we talk about the divine light, divine energy, God's energy, as it is vested and related to, say, the Hishtalshalus chain order of creation, it doesn't make a difference. That is the answer that Kabbalah gives. The Rebbe is going to go on to explain that Avodah is also meaningful in the higher levels. But let's first focus on this answer. So who's the singular master? Who are the supernal heads? What's going on over here? V'hainu. Top of page Reish Tes Zayin. This means the b'bchinas adon yachid sheresh kol hasharashim, so far as the level of the singular master, the root of all roots, ein inyan ha'avodah negea klal. The matter, the concept of service of Hashem, serving Hashem, is not associated at all. Is not relevant. Has no meaning. Ki'im only b'hislapshusoi b'seder ishtalshalus, when he clothes himself, when he vests himself in the chain order of creation, when God vests himself in the chain order of creation, which means the level of godliness which is related to the chain order of creation, beginning from where? Beginning from the level of Chochmah, the Atzilus we're talking about, right? The level of in other words, the first of the 10 spheres of Atzilus, the first of the 10 divine attributes in the world of emanation. Shehireishi sayishtalshalus. For Chochmah is the beginning of the chain order of creation. The Chochmah Hireishis, because Chochmah is referred to as Reishis, the first one, the beginning. In fact, the Targum Yerushalmi The Yerushalmi, Jerusalem Targum, on the verse Bereishis bara Elokim, in the beginning Hashem created, the Talmud Yerushalmi says Bereishis means bechochma. Bereishis, with chochma bara Elokim, Hashem created as a Shemayim V'Sa'aretz, etc., etc. Meaning to say, with Seder Ishtalshalus, and the beginning of a Seder Ishtalshalus, chain order of creation, referring to chochma. So certainly, when we talk about the level of chochma, which is the beginning of the chain order of creation, avodah, service of Hashem, is meaningful, makes a difference. As the Rebbe will explain in a moment, why and how. V'gam l'maylam azen, even beyond chochma, b'bechinas hakeser, in the level of the crown, right, which is the level of godliness, which precedes the 10 spheres, the 10 divine attributes. Then in the lower level of the crown of keser, bechinas arich, the level of arich, Shiur, which is the root of the emanated beings. The idea of serving Hashem is meaningful. However, that's not the case concerning the level of Keser, the level of the crown, which is known as Atik. The inner dimension of Keser, the inner dimension of the crown, the higher level of Keser, that over there, Avodah, serving Hashem, also is meaningless. What does this mean? Keser, the level of the crown, right? If the 10 spheres, the 10 divine attributes that make up the building blocks, the chain order of creation, represent the manifestations of Hashem's will in creation, Keser is Hashem's will. In general terms. Just like the will of the person doesn't have any specific location, the person desires something in his totality. It's the desire of his essence in something. So too, Keser is more makif. It doesn't have a specific location, as it were, or attachment to anything within the chain order of creation. Rather, it's the driving force for the manifestation of the chain order of creation for the 10 spheres, for the 10 divine attributes that follow.
It's the first movement, I think you can call it that, out of
Atzmos, generally speaking.
Yes, or Ein Sof.
Yes. Generally speaking, that's the idea. Now, Keser is an intermediary between what is beyond it and creation, Seder Ishtalshalus, right? It's therefore made up of two components. One aspect of it relates to the higher level, to the Ein Sof, to Hashem, to the realm of the Ma'atzil, to the realm of the Emanator. And there's a lower dimension which relates to what? To the Ne'etzal, to those that are emanated. Right? So Pnimiyus HaKeser, Atik, the inner dimension of Keser, is still within the realm of the Emanator, the Ein Sof. Arich, the lower level of Keser, is already the dimension of the Ein Sof as it relates to those that are going to follow and be emanated. So far as therefore he says, so far as Arich is concerned, the lower level of Keser, since it is already the outer external dimension of Keser, which is already the aspect of the Ein Sof as it relates to the Netzol and to the emanated that are to follow, that already has some association to Seder Ishtalshalus, to the chain order of creation. And therefore, if Avodah, service of Hashem, makes a difference, has an impact on the divine energy, godliness, Hashem as He is vested within Seder Ishtalshalus, within the chain order of creation, it follows therefore that so far as Arich is concerned, the external dimension of Keser, Avodah also makes a difference, also has an impact. In one way or another, as the Rebbe is going to explain. Whereas when we talk about Atik, the higher dimension of Keser, the inner dimension of Keser, since it is still within the realm of the Emanator, the Ein Sof, Avodah, service of Hashem, man service of Hashem, doesn't make a difference. Again, I'm emphasizing that this is the answer so far as Kabbalah is concerned. The Rebbe will go even higher than that, but we'll get that later. Let's first understand how he defines the answer of the Kabbalah.
And that's part of the template of creation, really, the decision of how the universe will be. That is what is made meaningful in the world.
Correct. By the will. Correct. Yeah.
On the two levels, like the lower level, it's like those are the interfaces between Keter and the lower level is Arich, and interface between Keter and the upper level, which we don't really reach to, is
Atik.
Atik, yeah. It's like an
Yeah, it's like a
surface, one side's on there.
precisely. Precisely.
Right.
It's a device which allows for Ein Sof to ultimately find expression for Seder Shtashlis to come into being, and ultimately creatures, of course. Oidus and Kalim, etc., etc. Now the Rebbe explains it. Ubir Inyan, to explain this even more, we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the top. Ubir Inyan, to explain this even further, when we talk about the fact that in the chain order of creation, man's service of Hashem is meaningful in other words, from the perspective of the divine light that is vested within Seder Shtalshalos, within the chain order of creation, it is meaningful, hein b'hakelim v'hein b'ha'oros, both so far as the vessels are concerned, and also so far as the divine lights are concerned. Seder Shtalshalos, when we talk about the building blocks of creation, is made up, as we said before, of the 10 spheres, the 10 divine attributes. A sphera, a divine attribute, is made up of 2 components: the Eid, the light, the giving energy, and the Kalim, the receptors, the withholding energy, that which gives that light its texture. It reflects the light in a certain limited manner. So, for example, Chochmah, Bina, Das, and so on and so forth, you have the Eir, which functions within the Chochmah, but then you have the Keli that regulates and withholds and reflects the light of Chochmah in a certain specific and limited manner. So when we say Avodas Hashem, serving Hashem, makes a difference, so far as Seder Shtalshel is concerned, the chain order of creation is concerned, what are we referring to? Does it make a difference only so far as the Kelim are concerned, or also so far as the Eidos are concerned? The answer is both. What does that mean? What is a Keli? What is Eidos? What's the function what's the function of the 10 building blocks of Seder Shtalshel, the 10 divine attributes? Their function is to actualize Hashem's will in creation. How does that work? What is a Keli? The Keli, the vessel, without man's intervention, is incomplete. The idea is to draw down that divine energy into the world. How does that happen? That happens through man. What was the purpose of creating the Eretz Nekem? So that man can serve Hashem. What happens when he serves Hashem? He draws down, he allows for the divine energy to become manifest in the world. The divine energy that is vested within the 10 divine attributes of Chochmah through Malchus, right? So the Keli, which is the transmitter, as it were, the regulator and transmitter of the Eir, of the divine energy that's vested within it, into the world, cannot complete its function unless man serves Hashem. So therefore, if man does not serve Hashem, he causes something, he causes the Keli not to be complete, not to fulfill its function. So therefore, so far as the Keli is concerned, as far as the vessel is concerned, certainly man's service of Hashem makes an impact. And by the way, the Keli is not just some kind of withholding energy, it's a divine energy, it's a divine withholding energy. It is a form of Eir, if you will, a form of energy, but it's a withholding energy, a regulating energy. Right? So that's step number 1. The Eir, the divine energy that is vested within the Keli, although it is more removed, more distant, a stage removed from man and his serving of Hashem, but nonetheless, the purpose of that Eir, the purpose for that Eir to clothe itself, that divine energy that to clothe itself in this vessel, is for what purpose? To become manifest in the world through man's service of Hashem. What happens when man does not fulfill his function, his purpose in creation? Man does not serve Hashem. He doesn't allow the Keli to fulfill its function. He blemishes the Keli, as it were, and therefore he causes the Eir to become removed from the Keli. So although he doesn't, as it were, blemish the Eir, the divine energy, by lack of service, yet he does cause something. He causes the Eir not to be able to fulfill its function, to remove itself. So we see that so far as the spheres are concerned, the divine attributes are concerned, Avodas Hashem, serving Hashem, is meaningful if we do it, if we fulfill our mission, if we serve Hashem, then we actualize the purpose for which the divine lights were brought into being, with the distinction of the impact that it has on the Keli and the Oyer, as just explained. And if we don't, then we cause a blemish in the Kli, and we cause, in the vessel, and we cause the Oyer to become removed, and not to fulfill the purpose for which it came into being. Now let's see how the Rebbe says it inside. Ubir Inyan, to explain this, so far as the chain order of creation is concerned, the concept, this idea of serving Hashem, makes an impact, is meaningful, both so far as the vessels are concerned, the vessels of the 10 divine attributes are concerned, and also in the lights that are vested within those vessels. For Inyan the idea of vessels, which is the idea of concealing the divine light, which is vested in them, the idea of the keli is, the vessel is, that it gives room for the existence of the other. That's what the keli does. It regulates, it withholds the the light, divine light, so that what follows from it should be able to handle it. So keli, by definition, the vessel by definition means it allows for an existence other than the than the divine light. Ki, for kasher ha'oyer meir, when the light itself shines and illuminates, azay yesh nira kamoker, all that's present is what? Only the source. Ve'ein shum mitzias the zulas, there is no existence for another, for something separate, something other than the oyer, than the light. Aval kelim, for example, if you take the sun, the light of the sun. The light of the sun is not concerned where it shines. It could shine in a royal palace, and it could shine in a garbage dump. Equally, because it's totally not concerned about where it arrives. So far as Oyer is concerned, the Zulas, the other, doesn't come into being. It's not part of its frame of reality, right? Aval Kelim, however, when you talk about vessels, the receptors, the idea of them is, what's their function? To conceal the divine light. They give room for the existence of another.
Doesn't the light create the keli as well, isn't it? It's like it pushing in front of the keli has to be there first for the light to come into it. So doesn't the light actually pushing in front of it, the keli?
The kelim have a separate source. Kelim are from the withholding force.
Right.
Kelim, in fact, come from a higher source. That's why they're able to regulate the Oyer.
Okay.
Right? And it has its own divine energy, which it has its own Oyer that gives it sustenance and existence. The Oyer is the Koach HaBligvul. This is the Koach HaGvul. The Koach HaGvul is rooted higher in the Ein Sof than the Koach HaBligvul. The Ad, to such an extent, do Kelim give room for the existence of another, something outside of the Oyer. Through the abundance of descents and mutations, they are the ones responsible for the creation of actual created beings.
Are these kelim connected with the original kelim when we talk about the Shvira HaKelim?
Yes, absolutely.
Here we have many kelim, but in the Shvira HaKelim we only have one.
No, Shvira HaKelim you also had 10. Because you had 10 spheres, you had 10 divine attributes. That's in the world of chaos, where the kelim, the vessels were, or rather the divine lights that were clothed within those vessels were too powerful for the kelim to handle them. It was a necessary stage within the chain order of creation, because Oyer and Keli, for them to fuse as one and to function, has to go through a series of contractions and condensement in order for them to be able to ultimately fuse as one and function as a united entity. So
the fusing as one is what we're talking about. Gvura Chesed.
That when we talk about starting from Atzilus and down, we're talking about Oyrus and Kelim that function as in unison as one and are actually so united they become one entity made up of an Oyer and the Keli. But to get from Oyer and Sof, from God's infinite light to that stage, it has to go through a series of shrinkages and contractions. Included in that, part of that is a realm where the Oyrus first come into contact with Kelim, because Oyer naturally is a giving force. The Keli is a withholding force. So the Oyer needs to get used to the idea, as it were, that there is going to be a Keli. So the first introduction that it has to Kelim as 10 distinct entities is in the world of chaos, where all of a sudden it feels there's something that is going to withhold it, as it were. But it's still in a stage where the oil is too powerful to be contained within the keli. So what happens? Since vessels, the kelim, the vessels, the receptors, are the concept of another, as just explained, and ultimately now through abundance of descents, what comes out of them is this level of creatures, created beings. Therefore, so far as the kelim are concerned, the vessels are concerned, the service of created beings, their serving Hashem, is meaningful, so far as the kelim are concerned, because they're directly linked to them. What does that mean it's meaningful? By the lack of serving Hashem, if man does not serve Hashem, or doesn't serve him properly, this causes a blemish in the keli, in the vessel. Why? Because the whole function of the vessel is to give room for a created being and to transmit Hashem's divine energy to a created being, which means, so that therefore it means that the created being allows the keli to actualize its function, and therefore by definition, by the created being not serving Hashem, he doesn't allow the keli to fulfill the function for which it came into being, and therefore it causes a blemish in the keli, in the vessel. And the Rebbe says, not only that, also so far as the divine light which is vested within the keli, serving Hashem is also meaningful. Although lack of serving Hashem blemishes directly only the vessel, the receptor, and not the divine energy that's vested within the receptor in the vessel. Nevertheless, through the blemish that the person causes through lack of serving Hashem in the vessel, it causes the divine light which is vested within the keli to depart from the vessel. And this departure of the divine light from the vessel is not just, okay, you're not interested, I'm removing myself. No, this has an impact on the divine energy. This is meaningful also from the perspective of the divine energy that becomes removed from the vessel through lack of serving Hashem. Why? What's the purpose that this divine energy, for what purpose did this divine energy vest itself in the vessel? So that it could illuminate the vessel and ultimately become manifest in the realm of the created beings, of creatures. So therefore, when the divine energy is removed from the vessel through lack of serving Hashem, of the created being, so the divine energy does not fulfill its function. Yes, it doesn't cause a direct blemish in the divine energy, but it disallows, through lack of serving Hashem, we disallow the oil, the divine energy, from fulfilling the purpose and the function for which it came into being, and it came to become vested in the vessel. So insofar as we don't allow the oil, the divine energy, to fulfill its purpose, we have an impact on the oil as well. So therefore, so far as the chain order of creation is concerned, man's service of Hashem and man's lack of service of Hashem is meaningful and has an impact both on the vessel, on the receptor, and also on the divine energy that is closed within the keli, within the receptor.
Does this mean that it all manifests in Malchus, or level by level?
All of it. In the chain order of creation, every mitzvah, everything that we do is associated with a different aspect of the 10 spheres. Mitzvahs, the kavanos of mitzvahs, the intentions of mitzvahs are designed to correspond to levels in ishtalshalos. So to the extent that we lack the fulfillment of our avodas Hashem, and to that extent will impact the seder ishtalshalos. Again, depending on in which levels we're deficient or otherwise. Continue mitzvah tomorrow.